Hello everyone, I think we're live now. So my name's Ed, I am a member of WAY. WAY stands for Widowed and Young, so we are the national charity for people in the UK who have lost a partner aged 50 or under. So at the moment we're in the middle of our 25 Tuesdays with WAY series. So what that stands for is 25 people over 25 weeks sharing 25 different stories basically and experiences of what it's been like for them to be widowed and bereaved. It's all part of marking the 25th anniversary of WAY. Super excited because I'm going to be joined today by Amy. And I'm going to dial her into this in a minute. So the focus for today's talk is actually widowed and very young. So all of the kind of sessions have had sort of different focuses and themes. Widowed and very young for today. So people who've lost a partner even when they've been in their 20s and 30s. If, like me, you are no longer in your 20s and 30s, don't worry, because what we tend to find is there's a lot that sort of resonates with everybody regardless. So I am just going to get Amy any second. We will see her. This is always the most scary bit. Hello, Amy. How are you doing?
Can you hear me? Am I live? Oh,
I can hear you. You are live.
I've got a very official stand, which is essentially me balancing the phone in a pen pot, which is really
Perfect. I'm balancing it on a pile of books, so that's always the way these things
yeah.
go. How are you doing? How's your day been?
I'm good, thank you. It's been really, really good. It's been a very productive day. Tuesdays are what I've put aside as a self-care day.
Nice.
So it always starts with the gym, and there always has to be lots of wonderful things that fill the cup, as it were, on a
Yep.
Tuesday. So
Yep.
yeah, Tuesdays are good days.
Nice. And you're a big one for sort of routine and sort of doing the same sorts of things either day by day or week by week and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think structure has probably been it's sort of an oxymoron to say like sort of well-being and structured
Yeah.
well-being. But they do go very well hand in hand. Yeah, definitely having structure and having a process and having right, got to do this, this, and this, and this on these set days is definitely something that's helped me in the last couple of years, without a doubt.
Lovely. I wish I had that discipline. I wish I was organised and structured, but I just can't.
Yeah, it's something that has to be forced, that's for sure. Yeah, and the early mornings, they were well, took some getting used to.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll get into all of that in a minute. But first of all, thank you for chatting and taking some time out this evening to talk. I always think that people really get lots of value just from hearing different, like I said, different experiences, different stories, people who are at sort of different points of this journey, and I'm sure that there'll be lots that you kind of talk about that people will resonate with and find super interesting. So thanks for that.
I hope so.
But I always like to kind of kick off these sorts of things, just hearing about people's stories, hearing about loved ones and so on. And so if you don't mind, it'd be great just to hear a little bit about sort of Brad and sort of how you met and, how long you were together and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we met at school. We were very, very young. We were friends. We met when we were about 14. We were different form groups, and Brad was in a band and he played guitar. So obviously, ladies, you know straight away that ups a guy's like a sexy points by at least 3 or 4 points straight away. And yeah, we were friends for a while, and then we started dating when we were 17.
Yeah.
Dated all through sixth form, went to sixth form board together, dated through university, and then actually we're engaged. We in the third year of university, and we got married when we were 23.
Wow.
So all in all, up until the point that Brad died, we've been together for 15 years, and his funeral was on our ninth wedding anniversary. So yeah, it's a long, long time.
So did you go to university together as well, or did you have to do a
No,
separate?
we went completely separately, which is weird. We didn't even work it out. But I was a bit of a square and a prefect, and Brad wasn't of his own admission. So yeah, we went to different universities.
And
He applied for a couple of mine, but they didn't let him in.
yeah. And that's pretty amazing to have had that sort of like relationship from a young age, and it kind of survives that kind of point where, you know, university and kind of going away from home and doing all kind of new stuff, new relationships, new sort of friend relationships, new everything, and to kind
Yeah.
of weather all of that. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when he was at Bristol when I was at Exeter, so it was only an hour on the train, and because of the degree that I did in philosophy, a lot of it was own study. So I spent the majority of my time in Bristol, to be honest.
Mm.
And yeah, it just didn't actually. I can remember actually thinking, never actually thinking, I wonder if this will work. It just wasn't even a question. It was just, yeah, well, this is what we've got to do now. So
And did you have sort of other friends from school who had relationships as well that sort of tried to survive university in those sort of early years of adulthood?
yeah, and actually it happened a lot, and it's actually really beautiful. So many of the relationships that started at school, so many of my friends stayed. So my really, really good friends, Ed and Gemma, their relationship started at school. They're still married now, two beautiful children. Amelia and Jared, and I'm trying to think, Rachel and Harvey. Like I can list dozens and dozens of friends that are still together. I don't know if it was our school, maybe it's just something that happened with our school, but yeah, there's
Yeah.
like a real, and all throughout all of the year groups, there's loads and loads of couples that are still together and have now like gorgeous families that started
Good.
in the school halls.
Nice, nice. And I guess, I was saying that kind of the theme or the focus of this talk is sort of widowed and very young. And so I imagine sort of knowing each other when you were teenagers and sort of going through that sort of early adulthood. It's almost like you've sort of grown up together, matured together. Does that sort of resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we moved out married, so we did almost like the traditional, like you would in sort of 1950s type. We moved out of our parents and into our first married home at 23,
Yeah,
and yeah, got our first sort of proper jobs together, first mortgage, and like started our careers together. So yeah, absolutely. It was very much the first steps into adulthood,
yeah.
side by side.
And a lot of people who have sort of gone through that journey with a partner often say that, when their partner's gone, it's just so, not only is the kind of the trauma of being widowed, but also suddenly being an adult on your own in a way that you've never had to be before.
Yeah, it was very, very peculiar. I completely get that. That's yeah, something that really happened. It's because also as well you lose your mate,
Yeah,
your companion, your friend. There's someone that just the person that you used to bitch with.
yeah,
You know, that got a hard day at work. Oh, Karen again. Oh yeah, bloody Karen. And also, I think the thing that is hardest is that you lose the person that knows you the most.
yeah,
So suddenly you have, sorry, suddenly you have all these stories
yeah, yeah,
that you're now the only person that knows them. There's all
yeah.
those joint stories, joint adventures that you had, or things that happened in your life that even your parents didn't know, and suddenly you're the only person that has the knowledge of those, and that's something that was really hard to get to grips with.
And they're also the stories that are so kind of minor or inconsequential that no one else would know them anyway. It's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
Karen,
like
this ridiculous thing happened, and yeah,
yeah, like there's all weird in jokes, or some things that I carried on saying as an in joke, and I realised that I'm the only person that knows the in joke because it was something that Brad and I like. There's something weird happened that on a weekend away, or something that
yeah,
became a funny thing. So yeah, that's hard to know that the person that knows you the most is
yeah.
no longer around.
Definitely. I used to find, so my partner Jamie died, it's 5 years now, but even
Wow.
now I still find myself saying aloud some of those like in jokes or the little kind of pet names that we used to call
Yeah,
each other on the other end of the house. I still shout them out loud sometimes because I just feel I need to vocalize that. That sort of muscle memory is still there, and I just need to say those things
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. Because you just I don't know. It's a very strange thing. It's hard to explain to someone that doesn't get it, but yeah, well, we know. We all know.
And also, the other thing I always think of is it's not only the person who knows you the most, it's also the person that will tolerate you at your worst,
Yeah.
right? Like there's no one else on the planet that will kind of put up with all the little, all the kind of bad aspects of us that our partners tolerate and sometimes like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Oh, I've lost you. We've lost your sound. Oh, it's back.
Oh, am I back? Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, good.
You're
Yeah,
back.
it's an alarm going off. Actually, I'm.
I think Amy's just still going.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're
Okay.
back. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I had an alarm to remind me that this was happening, and now it's on
Gone off
snooze and it
12
keeps
minutes
on going
late.
off. It keeps on going off each time. So I thought, right, I'll just turn that off. That'd be easier. Um, so it was. I remember having this really strange thought and thinking, how am I ever going to poop in front of someone again?
Yeah, yeah,
Because you get to that point, right? You get to that level when you've already been really ill in front of someone,
yeah,
and you think, oh God, that took so long to get to that stage.
yeah, 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 yeah. And often I sort of hear or sort of read stories from people who it's like when you're at your worst. So maybe when you're ill, like, and you are like being sick or pooing, and all
Yeah.
the worst things that you could never do in front of anybody else. But your partner's sort of seen the best of you, but obviously the worst of you as well.
Mm. I remember actually how Brad and I got to that stage. It was really early on. We decided to book a trip to Egypt. We were only 19 at the time, but we wanted to go. We went on a windsurfing holiday in Dahab, and we decided it'd be a really good idea to go and have dinner with the Bedouin
Yeah,
and drink some tea. Why not? And the next morning we were both so ill, and it was forced intimacy.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you gotta do this. You gotta get over this hurdle as a couple straight away. And after that,
yeah.
we were fine.
And so when you were sort of, still really young, I think you said it was sort of 17, 18 that you sort of got together. Did you know at that point this is a kind of a long-term thing, or were you thinking, oh, we're just dating and see what happens?
I never really had. I was in a bit of a strange situation because my parents also got together when they were at school
Hmm.
and got married and were still married. And loads, and obviously my grandparents did, and so for me it was almost like the done thing. I
Yeah.
didn't even really think that one did date. It's actually been a really really strange learning curve, getting to the point where I've actually started dating again, and I'm seeing someone like wonderful,
Yeah.
but going through that dating process as in my 30s was really odd because I never did it in my 20s. I was married.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it just wasn't something that I even considered. I just thought that you met someone at school and that was it.
And I guess all the kind of apps, right, didn't exist when you were sort of even thinking about this as a teenager.
Yeah, exactly. And you didn't really need it because you just went to
Yeah.
school, you went uni, and you were just surrounded by people. So yeah, yeah, Tinder has been a learning curve, that's for sure.
That's a very, very common theme, I think, amongst people who have been widowed and they're sort of like putting themselves back out there in that space. It's like, just apps, and then dealing with dating if you've not had to do that for a very long time or ever. And then also just the kind of, I guess, the I don't know just the stuff in your head about, is this right? How, is it a betrayal? Is it, how do I feel about this? All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, going from the point of being someone's wife and you're a missus to
Yeah.
asking someone what their favorite color is like quite a stark contrast. I mean, I just threw myself into it and really enjoyed it. Met some amazing people and really, really lovely people. But yeah, very, very different. But again, and just an opportunity to learn and experience something new.
Yeah, yeah, great. And I know that we were chatting yesterday, wasn't it, about sort of some of the kind of other new experiences and things that you've sort of thrown yourself into. Do you want to kind of talk a little bit about some of the, just some of those things that have been going on?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing I just thought when Bradley died, because it was a suicide, there were a lot of issues that came up with it. For example, I almost lost my house.
Mm,
I had to sell my business that we ran together. I couldn't run that anymore, and it got to the point where, to be quite honest, I almost lost everything. I
mm,
almost lost everything. We were in COVID. It was very difficult to sort out everything, spending hours on the phone just to do probate. I mean, I'm sure everyone listening now knows exactly what that feels like and the issues that can crop up when you're trying to deal with someone's estate. And it got to the point where I just needed to get away. I'd always wanted to travel. I love traveling, always wanted to travel. And the day that I signed the paperwork to sort of hand over my business, and go through that process, within a few hours I turned up with a suitcase at St Pancras and got on a train. I knew I was headed to Frankfurt, didn't really know much else. I sort of had a half plan,
mm.
and I for 3 months just followed wherever was sunny. Thought, I had an Interrail app. I got on a train and thought, okay, where's sunny in the next few days? Where am I going? And just got on a train and went to that city. And I just thought, well, wherever I'm going has got McDonald's and an Uber. I'm fine. So, and yeah, just traveled around. I saw some amazing cities, loads of walking tours, met loads of amazing people, found a new tribe. Solo travel's never solo travel for long. You always meet just incredible people, and just listening to their stories, and you might spend a few days with someone and then move on. And it honestly was just exactly what I needed. It filled my soul. It gave me a foundation and a grounding, and I was really, really lucky and privileged to be followed by a lot of way members on Instagram, and made Instagram stories every day just to sort of take them with me on the journey. And yeah, it was the best thing I ever did.
It's amazing. I guess you know, just doing something totally new, right? And just kind of no rules, no nothing. Just pitch up wherever you like. That must have been very liberating, which I imagine at that time would have been just the thing you needed, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, just the rigmarole of all the paperwork and all the hoops you have to jump through and all the rules you have to follow and everything you have to sign, and you just think, I just want to just be free, and that's it.
And if you add that with all the sort of other massive change that you mentioned, so your business, I think, did you say you sold your house as well? And
Yeah, so I sold the business, but it
yeah,
was because of Bradley's suicide. Yeah, the house all had to essentially had to sell the business in order to keep
yeah,
the house,
sure.
which was absolutely heartbreaking, but
And
very, like a decision that had to happen.
but just a huge amount of change again that you're having to go through whilst you're sort of in this, really, in the depths of despair, for, going through kind of grief and bereavement.
Yeah, exactly. And then at the same time as well, undergoing trauma therapy.
Yeah,
So I had over 200 hours of talk therapy, CBT, and EMDR, 24 hours of EMDR, intense
yeah,
trauma therapy. And also, at the same time, when Bradley died, I was only 4 months post spinal fusion. So we'd previously been in a car crash. It had permanently damaged my spine. The December before COVID, I'd had a spinal fusion. When Bradley died, we were 4 months in. We were all just in lockdown, and all
mm,
of my physiotherapy had been cancelled. So pretty much had to spend the whole of lockdown dealing with Bradley's death,
mm.
dealing with the trauma, and also getting myself back physically, because I was at the point where I couldn't walk and still needed a wheelchair.
Just must have been just really 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 hard. All those things, it sounds like, kind of layered on top of each other, and just like another thing to have to deal with.
Yeah, God, yeah. I mean, my great grandmother used to say that God only sends you what you can handle, and I feel like her and I need to have a very strongly worded conversation.
Did you not appreciate that little saying?
I didn't know. And then someone else said, "Oh, they always come in threes," and I was like, "Yeah, not 21s."
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I don't know about you, but there, in a time like that, there's lots of kind of, sayings and kind of quotations that people will trot out, thinking, I guess, that they're you know giving you hope or making you feel.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm not sure about it, whether they really do. People always, whenever I've kind of met up with Way members, it's always good to kind of share the ridiculous things that people have said to you whilst
Yeah, I can remember what. To be honest, I have to say that particularly as it was during COVID, I've experienced the utter depth of human kindness. The 98% of
Yeah,
people that were just so wonderful, so supportive, so kind. People that I just even sort of business acquaintances that are now I would now consider best friends, purely
mm-hmm.
because of how supportive and wonderful they were. The people that sent messages, there were people that drove for hours just to see me, just for a walk, and people that send sort of gift baskets to make like self-care packages to make sure I was taking care of myself. Also, the company Huel, they were incredible. When I had to cancel Bradley's membership, they sent me hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of protein powder and meals because they
Wow.
knew that I wouldn't be eating properly. And have continued like sort of their support like up until this point. It's just
Mm.
yeah, I've experienced utter like just gorgeous human kindness.
Yeah.
There's one saying about messages. There's one message that I really, really remember, and it was 3 days afterwards, and it was someone that I'd met once at business networking, who messaged me on LinkedIn, and all it said was, "Oh my days, what the hell happened?" And I just thought, I'm just going to leave that one. I'm just going to leave that one.
Yeah.
but
Don't really
the
know how
majority were
something like
like,
that. Yeah.
yeah, were lovely. And yeah, even people saying sort of like, I don't really know what to say, but I just need to say that I'm saying something. Like, yeah,
Mm.
that's really lovely, really lovely.
Yeah. 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 And you mentioned that obviously it was a suicide, like you mentioned for Brad. And um and when we'd spoken, we talked about sort of mental health and sort of that being kind of a big theme, and something that you're maybe kind of more kind of conscious of, or sort of more aware of now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bradley had been ill for a while before his death. I had been taking like so I'd registered myself as a mental health carer and was
Mm.
having support for myself to care for him and his mental health. But having been through the system myself as a carer and personally, and seen Bradley go through it through the NHS and privately, and seeing where there's so many holes and so many issues and challenges with the system and its funding. For me now, I'd already started to go into this area, but really pivoting my career now to go from what was purely digital marketing and
Mm.
running businesses to now looking at mental health infrastructure and wellbeing and empowerment infrastructure within businesses, particularly digital business,
Yeah.
because mental health is an issue that is rife, particularly
Yeah.
in certain industries, digital being one of them. And there are opportunities for business owners and directors of businesses to actually make a real difference. And we're not
Mm.
talking about let's just tick a box to say that we did it for some government checklist. Let's actually look at the business as a whole and actually make a real bloody difference. Let's actually
Yeah.
let's grab it by the balls and implement real change that is going to help look after employees and look after their mental health while they're working.
Definitely. Yeah. 'Cause I sense that sort of in recent years, there's a little bit more of an awareness about mental health. You hear it talked about more often. in the news by celebrities, you know, people like Prince Harry
Yeah,
and so on, like very high profile people, people talking about it, but it still feels like it's quite a taboo, isn't it? Especially for men, and sort of the idea of opening up and being vulnerable and sort of sharing how you're feeling. Often people, men and women, just don't really know how to do that or where to go and so on.
yeah. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's been a lot of progress, and particularly in the look of the last decade, there's been a huge amount
Mm.
of progress. Obviously, there's still a long way to go. The stigma still exists.
Yeah,
You're quite right. A lot of celebrities have been talking about it. It's talked about more in the media, in interviews, and there's much more open conversation and forum around mental health. We obviously have Mental Health Awareness Week. But the fact still remains that suicide is the number one killer for young males,
yeah,
with against all other diseases, heart disease, cancer, everything put together. Suicide is the number one killer, and
yeah,
there is a reason for that. Is because there is still this perceived idea that men should be strong, and strong equates to not showing your emotion. It
yeah,
equates to not crying, not sharing, not doing anything, whereas women are much more. I mean, obviously this is a complete sort of a bias that I'm doing here. It's a bit black and white, but
yeah,
traditionally women are seen to be more able to show their emotion, more allowed to cry,
yeah, yeah,
and that's ingrained in us from childhood.
yeah.
So if to make a real change, it's an education piece, and it's something that we need to do from our children from young ages up. And we'll start to hopefully see more of a change as each of the generations grow up.
Yeah, a lot of what you say resonates strongly with me. So my partner Jamie died through alcohol addiction, essentially, like
Oh,
liver failure. But it was only afterwards that I really understood the link between, you know, addiction and mental health. Before that,
mm,
I kind of got it on a very conceptual level, but I thought, oh, that's not the problem. It's a
mm,
different problem that we need to fix here. And it wasn't until he died that I, you know, just things fell into place for me, and I really understood, oh, you know, the kind of deep depression and mental health issues that are sort of driving something like an addiction. And it's funny because it's such a taboo. And if I were to sort of talk about that with his family, they would say, oh no, he was confident, he was smiley, he was, you know, he was fine, there wasn't a mental. It's almost like they would rather talk about him being an addict as opposed to someone suffering from mental health, because that's an even bigger taboo to them.
yeah, exactly. It's. I think I even had conversations with people at the beginning where people it was still the suggestion of, are you going to tell people the truth of how he died?
Yeah, yeah,
And I just couldn't believe it really. At the time
yeah,
it was 2020, and there's still the suggestion that I might cover up that it was a suicide. I just
yeah,
went, of course I'm going to say it's a suicide. Unless we
yeah,
talk about it,
yeah.
unless we actually share it, unless we tell the actual story, how is this, are we ever going to change the statistics?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah. And it's you know, it's always heartbreaking to sort of see how many other Way members have lost a partner by
Yeah.
suicide as well. And I know that there are sort of subgroups and so on within the Way community for people to kind of share and kind of get support from each other. But I'm interested in terms of your you know, getting involved in Way and finding that. How did you find out about Way? How quickly did you become a member?
Very, very quickly, I think within the first 3 months, I
Yeah,
became a member. And although unfortunately it was obviously COVID at the time, so I couldn't do any of the meetups or anything like that. But the way group, the subgroup for partners that have lost partners to suicide was incredibly important to me, and
yeah,
was because there suicide, they say, and it is very true, it's like grief with the volume turned up to 10. And there are some issues and challenges that one faces when losing someone to suicide that you don't get in other areas.
yeah,
There's a lot more anger, there's a lot more confusion, there's a lot more guilt
yeah, yeah,
associated with the grief, and that presents a lot of issues that are very hard to deal with, and it was for me, that subgroup of Way was completely invaluable, particularly when
Yeah.
I was in lockdown, living with my parents, not being able to get to help groups, not being able to visit people or talk to people face to face, being able to just chat online and share stories and think, oh God, I'm not the only one, was just so important. I can't tell you.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people say that about what, subgroups and sort of um, other subgroups, other kind of topics. Just hearing from people who are in a similar situation, or who understand what you're saying, even if they haven't experienced exactly the same, they kind of get where you're coming from, and they know, right? They're not going to say silly things about OMG, what just happened, sort of thing.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
a little bit more empathetic.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think that's why Way is so important. And it's just amazing that you guys have been going for 25 years and helping people for 25 years. You provide a community of people that just get it,
Mm.
and that's the phrase. They just get it,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
it's wonderful. You just don't. Even if you're in a situation where you just want to go and just sit and just be, you
yeah,
can, and they just get it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And especially, I think, because you said this has all happened during COVID as well,
Mm.
where, social isolation and the ability to kind of go out and actually meet people, meet friends, and kind of actually get, a physical hug or comfort and all of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff was much, much diminished as well.
I think that's probably the hardest thing, is I not being able to hug people. So
Yeah,
that's a time when someone has died. That is the first thing to comfort, to hug, to have
yeah,
physical contact, to hug your family, to just hold each other, to just be with each other.
yeah,
And I think probably one of the hardest moments was seeing my grandmother and telling my grandmother had been previously told, but going to see my grandmother and not being able to hold her, and
yeah,
just having to put our hands up to the glass
yeah,
and just cry, just opposite
yeah,
the sides of the grass. Honestly, one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life.
yeah,
And
yeah,
friends were amazing. They'd come and we would walk together when you're allowed to do socially distanced walks, but
mm,
having to be sort of a few feet apart and not just hug. And
yeah,
it just makes you realize what a natural human thing it is to do, to hug when you're sad,
yeah.
and how it was completely alien to have that taken away.
Yeah, there's so many things like that you wouldn't realize, right? You wouldn't kind of think about the importance of it at all. You wouldn't
No,
know.
no, not at all. But I tell you, that first Christmas when we were allowed, that first when it was all open, we were allowed to hug each other. I felt like I'd had like a year's worth of hugs for my nan stored up
Yeah,
and ready to go.
yeah. And so speaking of Christmas, that's another thing that sort of people often talk about, isn't it? Sort of anniversaries and sort of special dates, Christmas, New Year, birthdays, and so on. And that must have been pretty tough as well. Again, during COVID and so on. Sorry, my cat's just waving its tail
Oh,
here.
don't worry, there's lovely. I'll shut mine out. I'll shut mine out because he gets really empathetic and just wants to like lay on me whenever I'm sad. But no,
I realise there was
yeah,
a kind of
Christmas.
waving in the
I mean,
corner.
I don't know if other Way members are the same, but sometimes I think, oh, I seem to be okay, and then a couple of days before it just hits.
Yeah,
The first year was obviously horrific. The second year is strangely worse than the first. I think a
yeah,
lot of people say that. I think it's because the first year you get constant support and
yeah,
messages and things like that. And the second year you sort of, I don't know, there's this sense almost like you tell yourself that you should have moved on by now.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, about a week before, something will hit me that I didn't think would.
yeah,
Like it'll be before an anniversary or a birthday or something like that. And but having gone through more therapy than most people do in a lifetime, I'm I am primed. I'm ready to
yeah,
deal with it.
yeah, yeah. It's funny, definitely. I certainly was so shocked by how hard I found the second year because, like you said, I think first year you're kind of just in survival mode. It's
Yeah.
kind of just so much stuff going on. Everything's new, everything's crazy, and people are around you and kind of in it with you.
Mm.
But definitely the second year, I just remember feeling so isolated. I just thought no one remembers Jamie, just me, and yeah, just really really hard in a way that I hadn't expected.
Yeah, exactly. I think I had a weird one where I rang up a company to deal with something. It was still something to do with Brad's death and him coming off
Yeah,
the account and needed to, and they were really rude.
yeah,
And that, for some reason, really triggered me. Almost like a, don't you know I'm a widow? And yeah, it almost like you sort of, I suppose it's a bit egotistical to expect special treatment for the rest of your life. But
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, it is a strange one. It is sometimes you sort of it was actually this conversation that and preparing for this that made me remember that I am a widow.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
sometimes I can forget, not for any particular reason or bad reason. It's just because you
yeah,
move on with your life, and then suddenly something reminds you. Oh yeah, I'm a widow. When you've got to tick one of those drop down menus for your marital status, and you've got to
yeah,
pick widow, and it's bizarre because you grow up thinking that widow is sort of someone 80 plus,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, not 31, but yeah.
And that yeah, exactly, like our kind of stereotypes of what a widowed person is. It's like an elderly person often, isn't it? And so way is often obviously for sort of people who are under 50 when they lost a partner, but we've got people who sadly lost partners in their 20s and very early 30s. And I just like I said, I'm a little bit older than my early 30s, but I definitely remember just feeling a sense of, oh, I was counting them, how many decades I've got left of my own life to kind of endure this kind of grayness and just life that I didn't
Mm.
want anymore stretching out ahead of me. And so if you're even younger like you, did that sort of come into your thoughts, just the sense of like there's so much of my life still ahead of me, and how do I navigate this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because we were in lockdown, I was actually quite grateful for lockdown. It's quite
Yeah,
grateful for it because it's almost like everyone was stuck as well.
yeah,
I didn't get that. I know some people have described when you lose someone. I've certainly felt this with grief with other family members. You lose someone, and then it feels like the rest of the world is moving on while you're stuck in one place. But because of COVID, it felt like everyone was stuck with me, and it gave me that chance to just concentrate on myself and my own self care.
yeah.
Because everyone else was doing their own thing in lockdown anyway. It's not like I was missing out on parties or anything like that. Um, in terms of moving forward with my life, I think I'm a bit rare in that from very early on, I very much had the thought of, well, I am still here.
Yeah,
I'm still
yeah,
living. Life is worth living. Life is worth living, and I'm going to keep on living is a mantra that I've lived by my entire life anyway.
yeah.
And some people, I think, found it very difficult for me to have that attitude, thinking that perhaps I should be this more sort of morose sort of widow in the corner,
Mhm.
and they should have judgment on when I was allowed to get up and live my life again, because
So did
I did it quite I did it I think if society were to judge me quite soon afterwards.
And so, did you feel that judgment from friends and family, say, around kind of what what you were doing and decisions you were making, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not gonna sort of keep any secrets about it. I have lost friends.
Yeah.
I lost friends over it that definitely thought that I started dating too early. I think that was
Mm,
probably the biggest one. Because I'm in my 30s. I really want a family. I
yeah.
enjoy having a partner
Yeah.
and having that relationship, that friendship. And then definitely felt that there was a lot of judgment for moving on, or how quickly I should have moved on or shouldn't have moved on after Brad died. I'm just always been one of those people that is, what is done is done. You can't change it. And you can either take your wounds and turn them into wisdom and move on with your life and use your story to help people. And make your life worth something, as your partner would have wanted you to do. Or you can sit in the corner and not. It's just, grief is different for everyone. And I'm just unfortunately not one of those. I've just never been someone that would want to dwell on it.
And it's that sort of judging from others, which I kind of find really hard to fathom. How can you judge someone if you've not experienced that yourself? Like, who are you to say, oh, this is the period in which you need to mourn, and before you kind of do other stuff? Like, how do people come to that determination of what is acceptable and what's not?
Exactly. And also, because there's so many different forms of grief and different ways our partners died, and some of us could prepare, some of us couldn't. For some of us it was a big shock. Some of us have more anger than others. It's all just, every single piece of every death is individual, grief is completely individual, and how we choose to move on is completely up to the individual person. There was a really, really good saying, I can't remember who said it, but said, if you even have the slightest chance of happiness, of something that's going to make you happy, you should go for it. And you shouldn't judge someone else for attempting to be happy and find happiness in their life, because you only have one.
Absolutely. And so where does that sort of leave you now? What is it, sort of like 2 or 3 years now, sort of down that journey, and you know, how would you describe life for you now? And it's, there's been lots of change, doing new things, but do you still feel hit by those waves of grief? Do you still feel kind of those kind of moments of despair? What's it like?
I mean, it's like every single other person in the world. I have good days and I have bad days. Honestly have to say that in general, I am happier and healthier than I've ever been in my entire life. And I've definitely found a new sense of self, a new foundation of who I am as a person. I don't think I knew who I was before that. Going through this process, the therapy, the grief, getting to the point of literally being at rock bottom, losing everything and building back yourself up, I'm actually grateful for that process, because it's taught me who I am, and it's taught me that I can be at the point of losing everything and still be fine. It's a humbling and brilliant process to have gone through. I have the waves of grief come, the triggers come. You never know when they're going to crop up, and I'll still have tiny bits of PTSD here and there that'll crop up. Brad and I spent 15 years together, so there is going to be a memory every single day. It's virtually impossible to not go through, walk down the street and there not be a memory of some kind. But it's just the acceptance and the being very, very kind to myself, and knowing that what's done is done, and now I'm going to move forward and take my story and use it to help people.
I think for me there was there came a point where the memories were happy memories. I could almost manage the types of memories and the types of things that sort of came into my head. They were the happy ones, rather than it's the guilt and it's the anger and all of that kind of stuff that's kind of sloshing around in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, and I'm sure you had the same thing. I'm sure everyone in Wales had the same thing. I remember the first time that I laughed. And the guilt that consumes you for laughing. And at that moment, it was one of my dear friends that made me laugh. And at that moment, thinking, oh God, I'm so guilty I feel so guilty for laughing. But then also my other thought, why am I so guilty for laughing? Like, laughing is a beautiful thing. Laughing is a gorgeous thing that we experience as human beings. And I made the decision then, no, I wasn't going to feel guilty for laughing. I wasn't going to feel guilty for happiness, for joy.
Yeah.
And if I had a chance at happiness, I was going to grab it with both hands.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was really struck by sort of what you were saying about how this whole sort of situation has almost sort of turned you into a different person, a new person, a better person almost. And when I first heard, when I was kind of very early on in sort of meeting people in where I heard someone else say something like that, like, I'm a better person now because I'm more empathetic. I've got this experience under my belt, and so I can deal with situations now that I wouldn't have been able to before. And that was a very kind of interesting way for me to kind of think about the journey that we've all been through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know it's sort of, I want to say touch wood, but
Yeah.
been in a situation where been in lockdown, 4 months post spinal fusion, like lost my husband to suicide, lost my business, almost lost my house, had to completely rebuild my life. What else?
Yeah.
Like, like something happens and oh, there's a spelling mistake on this document. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, let's think about context, people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, being in a situation where you're, and you never compare someone's
Yeah.
experience to yours. And when I'm speaking, when I'm doing keynotes, or when I'm in businesses doing their mental health infrastructure, I say this is a no comparison zone. Just because
Yeah.
my 10 out of 10 seems really big,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that whatever you're going through, oh, just because Amy's gone through more, I should be feeling less. No, 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 no. It's not about that. It's not about the
Sure.
comparison. But I'm grateful for that process and the learning opportunities that it has given me.
Yeah.
Without a
Yeah.
doubt, it has definitely shown me of what I'm capable of. Therefore, I'm much, much more likely to go into experiences with an open mind and an open heart, without fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And just keeping an eye on the time, starting to kind of wrap up. I guess one of the things that I read once from new members from Ways, they always kind of find it really inspiring to hear from people like you who are sort of kind of a little bit further, well, a lot further, sort of down the journey, and sort of seeing how people are coping, and that the despair that you're in those early days isn't necessarily going to last. And so I'm sure people will kind of love to have heard all of your stories. But what's the kind of one piece of advice, or thing you would say to someone who is kind of fairly early on? Like what's the kind of advice you would maybe give yourself looking back at that sort of early point?
That it is one foot in front of the other. It's one step at a time.
Yeah.
You're not you. They have this this idea of, you have this massive, massive mountain, and you have your goal at the top, and the goal could be a number of things that you have to achieve in this very difficult process. But I like to tell people, and say when I do talks, that you don't say to someone, oh, you haven't climbed Everest because you didn't use the base camps. So think about your goal as having base camps.
Yeah.
And you can separate those into and make them as small as you want. So whatever your goal is, it could be something as simple as making a phone call. Because I remember in the early days, it was really hard for me to get on a phone call because I knew that I would have to have a stressful conversation.
Yeah.
I think if I can just make one phone call a day, if I can just call one, I'm just going to call the electrical company today, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, maybe I'm going to have a shower and get up and go for a walk and call 2 companies. And just split your goals down to as manageable as they can be, and also seek help. Ask people for help. In those early days, people will say, anything I can do to help, please let me know. And it is human nature, but and also very British of us to say, oh no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Bloody take them up on it. If someone says, can I come and help you, say, yeah, I'd really like a lasagna.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that person will most likely make you a lasagna, and they want to help. They want to help you. They haven't offered unless they actually want to do something. So let them do it. That's their way of coping. That's their way of being involved in your grief. So take them up on the help.
Yeah. I think two really good pieces of advice there. I think people are often people often don't know what kind of help they need. I think that's often a
Yeah.
but just sort of like, yeah, taking anything that's offered, and then like you said, I love that idea of just breaking things down into the most smallest steps. And what someone said to me very early on, take it a day at a time, and if a day is too much, take it an hour at a time.
Yeah, hour at a time, absolutely. In this hour, I'm going to have a shower. In this hour, I am going to research. In this hour, I'm going to eat. Because actually, in the early days, we both know in the early days, eating, to be able to eat something is a triumph.
Yeah.
And yeah, splitting your goals down, getting the help. If you don't know how someone can help you, get them to make you food, because you've got to eat. Then that's it.
Very, very, very helpful advice. Look, on that note, Amy, we should probably wrap up because we get told off if we go over.
Okay.
It's
gone so quickly.
But yeah, time flies, doesn't it? And it's, there's just so many things to chat about, and there's so many things. But really enjoyed hearing all your stories. I think lots of people will be really kind of inspired by your mindset. So thanks ever so much for taking the time, and just a shout out to everybody else listening that we've got more of these over every other Tuesday. So keep tuning in at Tuesday at 8:00.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for inviting me on.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, and take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.